Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your modelers have practically built themselves. Folks, welcome to today's show. With it being the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Midway just last week, I thought it would be appropriate to show some of the models that I've built that have to do with the Battle of Midway and just talk a little bit about what I've done with them. So to start out, before I ever talk about Midway, I always talk about the precursor, which is the Coral Sea. This is William Hall from Utah, and he was a Medal of Honor recipient at the Coral Sea. Well, at Coral Sea, the U.S. aircraft looked a little bit different than they did at Midway. Here's a model of his aircraft, and you can see the red dots in the middle of the stars. Very colorful, nice, red, white, and blue, right? This is the way things were during Pearl Harbor, the first part of World War II, up through May. Because at the Battle of Midway, some things happened, like friendly fire incidences, where this is actually Billy Hall's aircraft flying over a U.S., that's not a Japanese plane, that's actually Billy Hall's aircraft flying over a U.S. destroyer. And it was fired at by U.S. gunners, and he was actually lost part of his foot from it. Here is his citation. I'll let you pause it and read it at your own convenience. But he actually, after the war, lived here in Salt Lake City, and a good friend of mine, his father and Billy Hall were best of friends. Quite interesting. So anyway, go ahead and read that at your convenience, but a very heroic person. Okay, so when it came to the Battle of Midway, you'll notice the star now has no red in it. There's no red on the tail. There's no red anywhere on this because we didn't want to be shooting down our own aircraft. This is a model of Lofton Henderson's aircraft. He was a Marine Corps major, as I believe, and Major Henderson led the aircraft that flew off of Midway Island to attack the Japanese. He was shot down. The field at Guadalcanal was actually named after him. There were 4 B-26s on Midway. I have a model of one of them. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it to show you, but here they are. Pretty neat. I actually have models of several of the U.S. aircraft, but just to kind of represent them, here is one of the Wildcats. I actually have a representative from each of the carriers, and the same with the Dauntlesses and the Devastators, but here's a representative of that. Okay, so this is something you won't see too often. This is the U.S. Pacific Fleet that sailed to the Aleutians when the Japanese did their little bit where they sent a force up to the Aleutians to try and draw the U.S. carriers out so they could attack them and they could have a free shot at Midway. Well, this is what the U.S. sent in response to that Japanese fleet. And you can see the ships like the Indianapolis and the Louisville, the Honolulu, the St. Louis, those cruisers. This is a representative here of the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Midway. The 3 U.S. carriers, the destroyer, and the cruiser escorts give you some idea how large that fleet actually was. Of course, they were 2 separate entities, but gives you some idea how big the carrier force was at the Battle of Midway for the United States. And well, we've seen the Japanese force before, so I won't go into that right now. But this was a display I did at Fort Douglas several years ago during Fort Douglas Days in June to kind of represent the Battle of Midway and this aspect that was very, very not quite so well known. And that was the Battle of the Aleutians, as it was called. And you can see here the size. These are 1/700 scale. It takes up a little bit of room on these tables, and I'll let you watch and enjoy them here for just a moment. We're all aware of the 4 very famous Japanese carriers that were sunk, but the Yorktown was lost at Midway, and here is a representation that I did of an old Revell kit where I put some rust on it and made it look like it was on the bottom of the seabed with hopefully the damage that it was supposed to have. Now, I do have a lot more ships. This is mostly American stuff here. I have a lot more of the Japanese. I have a lot more ships. I have a lot of other things that represent Midway. But this one we've covered before. This is supposed to be the lagoon where the PT boat base was there at Midway. Someday I'd really like to build one of the Midway atolls and have some of the defenses in place in 700. I think it'd be a lot of fun. Well, hey, folks, thank you so much for watching this week. And, we'll bring you up to date on some more of these at a later date. Maybe next year for the 81st, we'll show you some more of the models. Thanks for joining us.